Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, brought to you by Music Ally. It's the show that looks at both the finances of the music industry, but also some of the stories and the comments which has passed in the last week in the pop business. I'm Steve Lamack, he's Stuart Dredge. If you want an easy guide to what's going on in the music industry and how it all works, here we are. This week, something slightly different again this week, actually. We will run through a few of this week's big stories, but we're also going to be speaking to Ricky Bates from the venue The Joiners in Southampton. The Joiners has been one of the linchpins of the grassroots live circuit over the past 3 decades or so. We'll talk to Ricky about, last week's Music Venue Trust report, also just what the reality of running a venue has been like in the past year, and what he thinks the future holds as well. I think it could be very informative. Before that, here's a live music related lead story. The Live Trust, the charity set up to manage the money collected from the £1 voluntary contribution on gig tickets. You probably know about this already. This is a £1 contribution for shows above 5,000 capacity, where the money that's arrived from the artists and the promoters who've contributed so far is now going out to a range of organisations. The first round of Live Trust funding will see £500,000 being distributed to, as I say, a variety of organisations, which hopefully will go on to support venues, artists, promoters and festivals at grassroots level. Obviously, for full disclosure, I am one of the trustees who's been involved with this. So maybe, Stuart, maybe you should take this one for starters. Give us your view on this.
Yeah, should I tell you what you've done?
Yes, if you could. Just remind me.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting because, like you say, it's £500,000 being distributed from the levy. And what I thought was interesting was it's broken down so you can see where the money's going.
Mm-hmm.
So to break it down, so £200,000 is going to music venue support from the Music Venue Trust. So that will go to grassroots venues. I think it's under 125,000 is going to the UK Artists Touring Fund. So that's going to focus on artists who are touring and need some help with the cost of that. There's an independent promoters scheme. It's getting 75 grand. A micro and very small festivals development program is getting 50 grand. And then there's some money for programs in Belfast and in Scotland, and a music production scheme for young people. So it really, for me, I mean, you can tell me if I'm right here, but it just felt like a really interesting announcement because it wasn't just saying we're giving away money, but it was just outlining the full breadth of it. It's not just venues, it's the people and how it's breaking down.
Yeah, I think the overview of this is that the money should go somewhere where you can see it make a difference, and so for instance, the Music Venue Trust's money, as you say, they're getting £200,000, but that will be spread across various plans they have for it. Obviously, some of it will go to their emergency response team, who are at the coalface of keeping venues alive. But then there's things like they're going to put some money towards taking venues off the grid to bring down their energy costs. There's going to be money available for improvements to venues, and also there'll be some money going into. This is the idea is that there are venues that have, spare floors upstairs or something. And then the idea could be, and some money will go towards, if this is possible, converting parts of venues into what can become accommodation for groups, thus bringing down the cost of, the overheads of touring. So, yeah, and with all those things, I think you'll see an immediate a result of the money going in. So it's really, the money's there targeted at delivering, identifiable goals, and I think that's the thing. There's a lot of money. The schemes in Scotland and in Belfast at the OER Centre, a lot of the schemes are also based around trying to get more young people into the industry and in education, really, and hands-on experience. I think that's important. And the UK Artists Touring Fund, that's partly it's almost partly making up for the fact that record labels now offer, or very rarely offer, any kind of tour support for bands, which has made it really incredibly hard for some artists to get out on tour. because it costs them so much. So they'll be looking into ways of, reinvigorating the touring circuit and helping artists who might not have been able to go on tour to go on tour. So, I mean, there's a lot in it. It's been 2 years in the making, this, from the original discussions which we had with people involved in live music, and then of course working out the mechanics of the contribution and how that would work, and then explaining the concept to managers and promoters and agents, and securing their backing. It's been a long process, and then even after that, obviously setting up the Live Trust charity itself, and working out what the plan is going to be. It's taken a while, but it's a bit of history, this, I think, and hopefully marks a new era for grassroots music in the UK. If you'd like more information, including there'll be updates on the timeline for the next wave of funding, that'll be announced shortly, I think, but there's more information on the Live Trust websites. It's also, it's worth mentioning, isn't it, that as this money goes out, there's obviously more money coming in. Who's the latest artist who has signed up to support the trust by committing £1 of their ticket price to this project? It's Harry Styles. Forward. Harry Styles is going to contribute £1 a ticket from his shows to go towards this, this attempt to reinvigorate grassroots and support live music at the grassroots level. Harry Styles, who's doing, what is it now? Is he up to 8? I think it's 8 Wembley stadiums now, isn't it?
Every time I look, it's a new gig. Yeah, but I saw a post from Mark David actually, sort of talking about this as being a really good thing as well, because I think Live Nation are involved in this, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And there's been some discussion of whether they're supporting us or not. And he like, he did his post saying, "I want to credit where it's due," and that was nice to see as well. That there's a
very big nod to Harry and his management and the promoters for making that happen. He joins the list. I can't read out everyone who's contributed, but respect to Basement Jaxx and Biffy Clyro and Diana Ross, Florence and the Machine, Ed Sheeran, of course, Foo Fighters, The Cure, Only the Poets. Who else? Mumford and Sons, My Chemical Romance. So, I mean, the list is ever more impressive, and we hope more people join us on our crusade. Actually, I mentioned Harry and his management. Here's a story about management. There's a couple of thoughts, actually. These next 2 stories both came out of Music Allies Connect conference last week. One of them was the observation that managers are doing much more of the work that record labels used to do, and maybe they're not being paid fairly for the amount of work that they've picked up, the managers, because the traditional 20% deal that they often have with artists doesn't really cover everything that they're putting into the project. That's essentially it, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, it came partly from your interview with Niamh Byrne, didn't it? Gorillaz manager and long-time Blair and Damon Albarn. And she just, I've had so much good feedback about that session, because she just got up and talked with experience and knowledge very clearly about what's happening and what trends have changed and what she's doing. And people loved it. I think we need more managers at conferences.
Yeah. Well, more honesty, I think, as well. More actual, more experience, more stories, more explanation, and the plain truth.
And it was interesting because, like you say, one of her big points was that managers are doing a lot more of the work that they used to do, particularly around planning album campaigns and marketing for releases. And she was talking about the idea of that labels might actually hand managers the marketing budget for projects because they can do a better job with it. Not because they aren't good people at labels, but they are often overloaded. There's a lot going on, a lot of artists to handle. And she was saying, we have to succeed for artists and we have a smaller roster. And it was kind of interesting because I think you could go to this conference and you could have said, "Oh, you don't need a label anymore. Managers can do it all." But actually, what also came through was Niamh saying, "Well, actually, funding is difficult. We don't have the money necessarily to do the stuff we want to do. The labels still provide the funding." And then later on, people were talking about how labels are still really good for helping you break internationally, helping you kind of do things around the world. So it was this mixed picture of like, actually, yeah, we're doing some of the stuff labels used to do, but we do still need them for things, even if we would like to be able to do them on our own. But yeah, the other thing that came through, and I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? That this idea of the way managers get paid for what they do. And the fact that I guess traditionally they were deal makers, weren't they? They'd strike the record deal for their artists. They strike all the live, and then they would get paid. I think 20% is a standard thing, isn't it, of deals they made. And yet nowadays, and this came through from a panel later on in the day as well, they're doing so much work in between that's not deals. It is planning the campaigns, it's running things. But the way they get paid hasn't necessarily moved on. So that was a big theme, I think, that how should managers earn? And the other thing I picked up from it was that, okay, if managers were to earn in a different way, if they would get more of the money that artists earn from all their stuff, not just deals they strike, does that money come from the artist's share or does it come from the label's share? And that was the other discussion here about, managers don't really want to take money out of their artists' pockets if they can help it.
Yeah.
But maybe they're talking to labels saying, well, can we not have a share of what's happening there because we're doing the work? And that feels like a fun discussion that's going to be going on or is already going on.
Yes, that's that interview which we did at Connect. We did record it, so I think we might play it out next month because, as you say, there were some very interesting points and some good stories and observations. So Niamh Byrne next month on the programme, hopefully. Something else, and I missed this particular panel or this particular talk. Tell us though about Universal Music Group's Jonathan Dworkin's thoughts on AI music, because I think this may have raised one or two eyebrows.
Yeah, so this was really interesting. He was the lead keynote at the conference, and he's very high up in Universal Music's digital business development and strategy team. So he's one of the people doing new deals, looking for new technologies, and he's quite a key figure in AI music, for example, what they're doing there. And yeah, he said, and this, I think we can all agree with this, he said what Universal doesn't want to see is, quote, this nonsense 7 million tracks a day AI slop stuff. They don't want to support anything that kind of just chucks music out and competes with human artists. And then he said this quote, and apparently he said this quite often. And I met some of his team and they were like, yep, he talks about this all the time. It's one of his pet things.
Right.
So the quote is, I really want to hear what it could sound like for Jimi Hendrix to play Bitches Brew, which is Miles Davis' classic album, or for Fela Kuti to cover Talking Heads, or for Jeff Buckley to do anything. And before we get into this, he did immediately say a caveat. And he said, these things don't exist now. There isn't an AI thing that lets you do that. And they shouldn't exist unless those specific artists have consented, or if they're dead, their estates. And he also said he was talking as a fan. He'd like to see this as a fan of those artists, rather than he was saying, this is what we're going to make and do and strike deals for. But it was weird because some people there were kind of like, that sounds amazing. And other people reacted quite strongly against it. I don't want to hear that. They never wanted that. Why would you do that with AI? And it became a bit of a talking point.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? There was that point, wasn't there, where people were getting, using or mimicking Johnny Cash's voice, and there's, and I don't know, and the songs that they were making the Johnny Cash voice, it was very uncomfortable, I think. So I don't know, I don't know what I think. Really, I'm not as excited by hearing stuff like this as he is. That's what I'll say. It doesn't. It doesn't get me going. The idea of, what about if you had, I don't know, Florence and the Machine doing Patti Smith? I mean, you could do that anyway. But do you know what I mean?
If Florence and the Machine got Patti Smith up on stage for a Glastonbury headlining set, for example, and they did a song on stage, that would be exciting. But they'd be the humans doing it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about. So I was thinking, let me try something on you. Something I'd like more, which is not Artist X and Artist Y crossed. So I was thinking about Super Furry Animals, the band I like. I love their sound, their songwriting. I love their visuals, everything around them. And what if they did something where there was a super furry AI that would let me play and make my own songs using their kind of sound, and I couldn't release those songs, and I might pay for it and they would get paid for it. And I could just spend time in their world, making stuff. That is more interesting to me. And it would depend on them being up for that and letting fans do it.
Right.
I think that's maybe sort of another angle on what he was getting at, that if musicians go, actually, let's let fans play with our sound and our songwriting. But again, a lot of artists I think might be quite loath to do it at the moment because it's all so early and new and sounds a bit weird.
Yeah.
That's what I would like, but can we get them to do it? You must have some ins in their camp. Get them to do that if you could.
You're the one who's bought the tickets to see
That's
them.
true.
I think it comes down to the actual paying fan to lobby for this.
Shall I make a sign?
Yeah.
Do an AI thing, Griff. Come on.
Right then, any other business for this week? Well, it's our first interview of the year. We are hoping to bring you insights into the industry from a selection of guests, hopefully one a month, if we can sort that out, just to bring you closer to the reality of what the industry is like. It seemed pertinent after the publication of last week's Music Venue Trust report into live music that we should focus on the real life of a grassroots venue. The venue in question, the Joiners Arms, opened in 1968. It came into its own in the 90s, playing host to a number of bands who would soundtrack that decade, since when it's hosted early gigs by Muse, The Libertines, Klaxons, Catfish and The Bottom. I mean, it's probably easier making a list of people who haven't played there than the ones who have. But what are the financial challenges of keeping the venue afloat? How do you spot the next big thing? And who's asked for the most surreal or idiotic rider? To answer some of those questions, we are joined by Ricky Bates. Hello, Ricky.
Hello, Steve. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you very much for joining us. Just so people know, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've worked at the Joiners and what your roles have been there over the years.
Well, I started in 2013 on a cold November night. The first week that I actually started here, I think I was looking the other day, we had the 1975 here, and they only had 2 songs out. I think they played like 25 minutes. But yeah, I got involved initially because the venue was I was doing my own shows here as an independent promoter, and the venue got itself into a lot of financial trouble, debt, and that was even before how bad the music industry is now. So end of 2012, 2013. So there was a lot of promoters that were using the venue, and we were kind of like, well, if the Joiners goes under, then we don't have anywhere to do these shows and there'll be no scene. So I jumped in temporarily to try and help, and then I'm still here 12 years later.
Right. So what did you do? Did you take over? Did you become a sort of in-house promoter then, or just a general dog's body trying to just shore up the workings of it all, and as you say, just keep it going?
Yeah, it was kind of like I kind of came into that. They had a division of, they had a nightclub at the time. That was when all these alternative nightclubs became like a big thing, around that time. So they were putting money into that, and there had to be a divide of business between the live venue and the nightclub. And I think the nightclub was draining the Joiners quite a lot financially, and so they were linked together. And I kind of came in and was like, well, screw the nightclub. The Joiners is like the main feature here. So if anything's going to survive out of the two, it has to be, the Joiners. So I had to kind of come in and remodel the way they were doing everything. I think they had club promoters, and as we all know, club promoters aren't live promoters. There's a massive difference in terms of what we're in it for and what we're trying to achieve, and the levels of effort that it requires. This isn't a USB pen. There's elements of like production and logistics that require more than just turning up drunk and hitting clay. It's not one of those. So I just think they had the wrong staffing at the time, and so I kind of came in and was like, right, let's figure out a plan. And we had to make the landlord at the time said that we owed, I think it was like £67,000 in rent arrears and brewery debt through the brewery at the time. And he said you got 3 months to pay it, or you'll be chucked out, and it will become a shop or retail. So we panicked, and obviously called our old friend Frank Turner. He did 2 shows on his birthday, so we made like 15 grand in one day. And then we had the notorious, infamous vaccine show a couple of weeks after that. Where someone ripped the fire door off, and there were over 350 people in the venue, and it actually fits 200 for those who are unaware. So you can imagine the chaos that ensued. And then, so I kind of slowly had to build back the business, but I got thrown completely in the deep end because, at the time, I was working at HMV and then another bar job. So I was doing 2 jobs and trying to run the joiners at the same time. Well, save it from being closed down completely. So yeah, it was a lot of high pressure situations.
Let's talk about, there's a lot of stuff actually which we'd like to get through if we can. I mean, there's some still concern, stuff which of deep concern when it comes to the grassroots circuit, but there are some positive things, I think, coming through, including, the news recently for yourself about Music Venue Properties taking the venue under its wing. We'll get to that in a second. But how was the venue doing last year as a snapshot? How were bringing the story up to date? How were its finances? What is the reality of running a venue in 2025 going into 26?
I'd say I kind of feel like I've gone full circle. It's like not that with that amount in debt, it's just the difficulty of, it's almost like we've hit a reset button in the last 2 years. So where it's, after COVID, there was this flourish of people wanting to go back out and go to gigs again. And then I think last year, we had some amazing shows. Like we punched way above our weight because we used the bigger venues in the city. So that's the model of the joiners surviving is based on, the money we make within the joiners itself isn't enough to sustain the venue. We have to outsource to the, up to 1,000 capacity, and we reinvest that money from the bigger shows back into the joiners. So it's kind of like this ecosystem of circle of life of, we'd like to bring the bands here, sell the show out here, and then, go into the 400 cap and then go into the 800 cap. And we'll keep them as long as we can before, the national swoop in and take the tours. But that's something that I had to put in place originally in 2013, 2014, because, you sit there and you look at the finances even then compared to now, and it's difficult. So you just can't really make it work.
What are the biggest outgoings then for a venue like yours when you're totting up all the money that has to go out and all the bills that have to be paid? We're constantly being reminded of, it's rent, it's rates, it's energy bills going through the roof. Is that the reality?
It is, yeah. That's the boring part of running a venue. It's like you've got to sit there at the end of the month and go, the gas and the electric and the that don't own the PA. So like a lot of venues don't own the PA. So the PA and the desk and the lights and things, there's an outgoing for that. And it's the problem is with that is if you have like an older venue or a bigger venue, you can hide those desks and those lighting desks and they're away from the mosh pit area or the beer spillage area. But you can't really do that here. So it's more of a case of, we have to hire our gear because things get spilt and thrown and explode and the wear and tear and stuff. So that's one big overhead. Then the energy bills is a big overhead. Then the staff going up, the minimum wage going up twice in a year, which I agree with. But the problem is with that at a business at this level or a small venue, it's, we're paying people, the bar staff shifts now gone from paying someone £45 a shift to £60. And you got 3 or 4 bar staff on that, then pushes up your overhead for, you got your security. And then obviously you've got like earlier load-ins, and it's just like box office staff, show reps, sound guy, lighting guy, like people need to be paid. It's like, as soon as the general wage goes up, the sound engineer, then he needs to be paid more, she needs to be paid more, because it's only fair that the skilled people get paid more because the bar staff are getting paid. So do you know what I mean? The costs just go up and up and up.
You mentioned that margins are super tight. And I know we talked about the Music Venue Trust report recently, where I think half of venues made no profit at all and margins are super tight. Like, how does that impact the daily running of the venue and the decisions you're making, knowing that the margins as they are?
To be honest, I'm very cautious about the way I book now, about what I take and what I don't take. And there's a couple of things that kind of eats me alive, because I've always kind of been one of those, I'm the venue operator, business owner, whatever now, and all these other important titles you can give yourself. But at the end of the day, I'm still on my hands and knees patching up a hole in the floor at 1 a.m. with gaffer tape, because people have gone so crazy at a hardcore show, they've ripped it up. But, it's not, or you're in the drain trying to unblock something because someone stuck a pint glass down the toilet. it doesn't matter how important your role is, it's still like it's all encompassing at this level. So it's very difficult. So the margins have become so tight that I'm like looking at bands that I want to put on, but we have to be like so careful with how much we're offering. Yeah, and it kind of eats at me because I want to grow new artists.
You alluded to this, but I wanted to ask, because another of the key points in the Music Venue Trust report that was about tours getting shorter, but also how some towns and cities are just falling off the gig circuit. And when you look through that list of places that always used to be part of, an up and coming band's tour, you definitely go to Leicester, you might go to Wolverhampton, all these places though. Is this something you've noticed, and is this affecting you, that people will come only so far? They won't quite make it to the south coast, and if they do, it's Brighton, and that's as far down. We're not going any further west. Thanks.
No, yeah. It's kind of that's something that it's beyond irks me, because when you grow an artist from like joiners to the next level at the engine rooms or the 865 or the Brook, we then don't see them again because they just go straight into your Roundhouse in London or your Academy in Manchester. So the shorter these tours are becoming, then the less business that we have. But it's also it's just destroying the entire ecosystem. And there's an element to it where I'm like, there has to be, these agencies and these booking agents and these managers have to take some sort of responsibility for routing their artists into regional towns. And I'm not talking about going and playing in, the arse end of nowhere in Cornwall, or, I know Plymouth used to be a place that had a bunch of venues and bands rarely go there. Exeter Cavern, struggling. I pay attention to what listings are in venues, because we're all kind of looking at, we're on this level playing field of going, well, how are they surviving? And how are they surviving if we're struggling?
But it's such a shame, isn't it? Because the audiences, there's usually an audience there. And what's been one of the great strengths of the joiners over the years, I mean, I've followed bands who've toured, routed through your place, and it's some of the there was a really enthusiastic audience. I'd say for Catfish and the Bottlemen, which is one of the hottest gigs I've ever been to. It was so exciting, and they had such a brilliant time because they're on the cusp. So it's really it's the bands. The bands are missing out, as you say, as well, because this is the point, isn't it? Where it's still fun, and you're moving up a level, and the audiences are coming with you. But we're getting to the point where there's large swathes of the country where there's audiences, but we're not serving them. This is something which I think which needs addressing, certainly. Because I mean, name some of all the bands that have come through. You mentioned, Vaccines played there, Libertines have played there. You've had so many bands, haven't you, over the years?
Yeah. It's complete bananas when you look at it, but it's it's Steve Strange signed Coldplay here on their second time here, and there were Rolls Royces in the street in St Mary's, which at that point in the 2000s, well, I think that was the year 2000, this area was not the best area to even have, you get your wheels nicked, let alone park a bloody Rolls Royce down here. But it's those moments are being removed from the fabric of the band's journey and their story. It's like, the Manic Street Preachers got signed in the dirty backstage basement here. They signed their first major record deal. As I say, Coldplay get picked up here. And then there's bands that, in COVID, we found more flyers of band, at the drive-in played here after, they only stayed together for that one record. They did Saturday Night Live famously, and then kind of fell out and broke up. They played a show here for £5, on the last run. Green Day did their Kerplunk release show here by accident. It's and those stories just carry.
Stuart had a question.
Well, we're kind of follows on because you were talking about filling rooms, and we were going to ask, how have audiences been? I mean, you mentioned 14 to 18-year-olds fizzling out, which sounds worrying, but how have you been finding audiences when you do have the shows on? I mean, is demand still there to kind of come out and see bands?
I think the demand is there. It's just the financial worry. So, we've all got families with kids, and we have to see it from their perspectives. If they're struggling to make ends meet at home, the last thing on their mind is disposable income to go on a night out.
Mm.
So, you know, we've seen a shrink of about 30% on shows here. So historically, there'll be bands, you have your staples that come to join us every year and sell it out, and they're happy to exist at this level, and they don't need growth. Like, you know, that they figured out a way to make it work. They play enough small venues, and, you know, they don't pay any merch rates and stuff like that. So, but now we're seeing that those bands that historically sell it out every time are now coming back and doing 160 tickets. So there's like this 40-person drop off, and you're going, oh, well, where have those people gone? And you know, no one really has the answer, because there's factors of everything. It's like the younger kids are attracted to the bigger thing. So if they want to go to Oasis at Wembley Stadium, they're more than happy to pay £250 for that, because they want to go to the bigger thing. But the problem is that those kids aren't working their way backwards. They're going to these bigger shows and arenas and things, and that's it. And then the conversation comes up about ticket prices, and then, you know, everyone starts saying it's too expensive to attend these gigs. And I was like, yes, at that level, I agree it's too expensive for families and, you know, 16, 18-year-old kids to attend, but they can go down the road and go to a show for £10. But the problem is the attention. How do you get these kids' attention? With us,
sorry, because I'm jumping in because you mentioned MVP, and it's probably a good point to come back to it. Music Venue Properties, by the way, that's what MVP is, and acquired the Joiners. I think it was November, wasn't it? This is part of their Own Our Venues campaign, where anyone can invest in it. You can basically buy shares, So you buy shares in Own Our Venues. You're essentially buying shares in all the venues that they buy. You've got one brick of every building they've bought. So you've got, you know, bits of all these buildings. The pub in Newport, you've got a brick there. We've now got a brick at the Joiners. What practically? What prompted the interest? Did you go to them or did they come to you? Because obviously the idea is basically if we own the venue, then we can take away some of hopefully, you know, you don't have that landlord moment where all of a sudden they say you're out in 3 months, the lease is up or the rent is up. So that obviously helps with the finances. But it is about bringing venues into community control. But what happened? What was the story? Did you phone them up and say we're done unless someone helps us?
Yeah, so it got to, this has actually been going on for a year. So the venue is officially purchased, like, I think end of October this year, and then we celebrated it in November. But it was actually October 2024. And the landlord was like, well, the lease is up, so we're going to look at turning this into either commercial or dwelling. I was like, cool, let's just try and get this through as quickly as possible. But then there was, you know, the building had to be surveyed, all the legal side of things, and there was the landlord structural engineer, and then there was our structural engineer, and then there was MVP structural engineer, and they were all trying to value the building. Obviously, the building's over 200 years old, so it's built in like 1810. So there's so much damage on the roof that needs to be fixed. So there was drones flown up there so we could take a picture of everything, and then, you know, the schematics of all the floors and the beams, and the wood is like 150 years old under the mosh pit. So it's now bent like this when you actually look at it. So that needs to be replaced in the summer. So yeah, so there was a lot back and forth, and everything came through. And I said, look, if MVP doesn't take it, then the venue's, if that doesn't happen, the venue's essentially done, because he will just sell it for development. There was some very tense moments of him not communicating for months to try and get more money out of us for things. And me and Matt and the other guys at MVP and MVT were having conversations for hours about how to get around this without it, you know, falling out of our hands. We had to be quiet about it, but professional, and then try and protect it. And then eventually we came to an agreement, because there's a lot of damage on the building. So it's going to need like 200 or 300 grand worth of repairs. But then it will be fine for the next. It'll be protected and secure like forever structurally for the next like 40, 50 years or whatever. So.
Yeah. Wow,
it's just
man, it sounds so nerve-wracking, though.
Yeah, we got it over the line thanks to everyone's efforts, and now it's in the hands of the community, which is ultimately that from day one when I came in here in 2013, that was all I wanted was the joiners just to stay as the joiners, and we were still in debt from all the way up until COVID. It took me until February 2020 to pay off the previous owner's debt of that 67 grand. And then the month after was lockdown.
Crumbs. Or slap in the teeth.
Completely bonkers. You couldn't write it. And I was like, cool, at least we're back to zero. And then that happened. And I was like,
do you feel more optimistic? I mean, given, some of the challenges, which it doesn't matter who owns the venue or who's booking the venue, there's a lot of things that need to happen in the culture of grassroots touring to answer some of the problems and the challenges. But do you feel now more optimistic? Obviously now, well, at least the possibility of you shutting down next week has gone away. That gives you some sort of stability, I imagine. Does that make you hopeful for the future?
Yeah, 100%. It's more like the worry in the summer, like once the sale went through, and Matt phoned me and was like, that it's signed, it's it's done, and it's like this huge relief off of your back, which is like been for like 8-10 years been like at any point at that point before the MVP deal came in, the joiners was just like a month to month thing, where on paper you're going, well, I can afford to pay. There were months even where there were summers where I just didn't pay myself for 3 months because there was no money. So I was just like, I'll just work for free constantly. So you're just volunteering your full-time job as a passion project in order to keep the venue afloat. Because if you're the venue operator, you're aware that if you take money out of the venue, you're just going to put it further and further in debt. So now I don't need to do that. But yeah, in terms of planning for the future, like the building is totally secure and MVP is amazing and all the people that invested, absolutely amazing. And I hope one day, maybe we can give them all a brick each when we do the refurb.
Or a beam.
That's what I'm in it for. An actual brick with your initials etched into it. Okay.
Perfect.
That's what we want. I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for talking to us and for giving us, for such clarity on, what it's like sitting at your desk, which it sounds like you do for hours and hours and hours and hours. It's not, as you've just heard, dear listeners, it's not an easy gig, this. Ricky, thank you very much. We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.